We are being sold one of the most blatant lies, at least of modern times, and probably more than that. In this network, you'll see the Club of Rome, started in 1968. The Club of Rome is there within the network to manipulate the environmental movement to advance this agenda of global centralization. This is the founder of the Club of Rome, Giulio Pesci, quoted in one of its own publications in 1991. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like would fit the bill. And that is what they have done. The greenhouse effect. Oh, it doesn't let heat out, so the planet warms, and it's the greenhouse gases, and it's carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide has become the enemy, the villain. Without carbon dioxide, first of all, in the greenhouse effect, the planet would be too cold for any life, and nothing would bloody grow without carbon dioxide, and we've turned it into the great bloody evil. And the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in relationship to other greenhouse gases is fractional, and the amount produced by human technology is a tiny, tiny fraction of that fraction. The idea that it's changing the climate of the planet is insane. Talking of which, I've learned many things in the last 20 years, and I've learned this. If Al Gore's involved, it's a scam. End of story.
The corporate elite of the planet intensified their push for a global taxation system. They claim that CO2, which plants breathe, was killing the Earth, and that we must reduce the number of children we have to curtail our carbon footprint. It is a scientific fact that the sun is the main driver of planetary climate, and the measurements are clear. The sun is becoming hotter, brighter. It has been slowly increasing thermal output in the last 100 years, causing warming not just on Earth, but throughout the solar system. But the scientific facts and even the order of the planets didn't matter to one of the chief organizers of Live Earth, David Mayer de Rothschild, heir to the British arm of the Rothschild fortune, when we spoke to him. When I called Rothschild on the order of the planets, he just laughed, thinking the audience wouldn't get it. He continued to count on the population's ignorance and claimed the global warming lobby has nothing to do with carbon taxes.
Global warming, the time for debate is over. I've been to these places, I've seen this stuff. I've spent over 200 days in the Arctic and Antarctica. Have you ever been outside of Texas?
Yes, I have been. Let me ask you a question.
Where are you finding your facts
Let me
from?
ask you.
BP's website? Listen, maybe your shares in the oil industry that you have in your back pocket there are helping to drive your radio station, and that's why you're a bit concerned about maybe your little taxation break.
No, it came out. Wait a minute. Queen
Have you got children?
Well, let me finish.
Have you got children? Have you got children? Do you think I make any money out of this?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing your your money-changing ancestors did. They're in Germany, Red Shield, and I'm calling you out, Red Shield. We know it's a scam.
Man-made global warming pollution causes global warming. That's not a cutesy issue. It's not an open issue.
The polar ice caps of Mars are receding at several miles a year, much faster than ours, and that the moons of Saturn and Jupiter are melting. In fact, several of their moons were ice and are now liquid seas. Now, how are SUVs causing that, David Rothschild?
That's because those planets are closer to the sun, my friend.
No, Jupiter and Saturn are not closer to the sun. Neither is Mars.
Yes, sir. I think you'll find, right, that the very simple matter, and what I wanted to say, and this is my final point, forget your taxation theory, because actually it's not taxation.
There are people who still believe that the moon landing was staged on a movie lot in Arizona.
And neither of us is one of those, and I know you like giving those cute anecdotes. This is not a cutesy issue. We're talking about that can export millions of jobs out of our economy. It's my understanding that back in 1997, when you were vice president, Enron's CEO, Ken Lay, was involved in discussions with you at the White House about helping develop this type of policy, this trading scheme.
I don't know, but I met with Ken Lay, as lots of people did, before anybody knew that he was a crook.
And you knew him well enough to help devise this trading scheme. And obviously, we know what Enron and these big guys on Wall Street like Goldman Sachs. And I know you've got interest with Goldman Sachs.
No,
these people. Well, that's been reported. Is that not accurate?
No, I wish I did.
With executives from you're partnered in companies with executives from Goldman Sachs. Well, Enron clearly had an interest in doing this when they were around. We saw what they did.
Of course they give him the Oscar for his rubbish, ludicrous documentary. Of course he gets the Nobel bloody Peace Prize, because the people that want this thing out there control who gets those things. And we have, if it's a scam, Madonna's singing on the bloody stage as well, it seems to me. This is the great Earth concerts around the world, selling a lie. These people do no research. And here's the global warming survival handbook for those live Earth concerts, written by David de Rothschild. Computers have a common kind of theme all over the world. Shite in, shite out. That's what computer models are, right? If you put rubbish data in, you're going to get ridiculous data out, and that's what these climate models are. And the idea is to scam us into a state of survival and a state of giving our power away, more and more taxation, more and more international law to dictate to us what we can and cannot do on the basis of saving the planet. New world order to save the Earth. The Earth don't need saving. You mess with it too much, you'll kick your butt off it. No need saving. Bigger than you are. Do you know sometimes when I go outside and it's cloudy and the clouds move and the sun comes out, it gets warmer. Have you noticed that? I think the sun and warmth have some connection. I feel it in my water. The sun sends out sunspots in cycles, a lot and then less, and now virtually none in the recent end of the cycle. And some of them are as big as Jupiter, and most are bigger than the Earth. They're massive. And they shoot out this solar radiation that comes to the Earth, and it's warm and it's less warm depending on the cycles of the sun. They're just incredible, and they do it in cycles, like I say. And the more sunspots that are produced, the more solar radiation stands back in amazement, the warmer that cycle is. And as it goes down into the lower part of the cycle, the temperature starts to fall. That's what has been happening throughout history, and that's what's happening now. Now, there may be other things going on in the sun. I think there probably are at the time as well, but they have nothing to do with what comes out of your exhaust pipe. In the period, of course, temperatures have been falling year on year now, as one scientist said, how many years has temperature got to fall before we realize there's no global warming? It's a scam. They're not interested in the truth. But when it was the temperatures were going up a little bit, it was pointed out quite rightly that temperatures were going up on other planets and moons of the solar system as well. I mean, what was causing that? Turbocharged handcarts, maybe. And when David de Rothschild appeared from his handbook on the Alex Jones show, he was asked about this, and he said, my friend, it's because he was asked about Saturn and Mars and warming as well, and he said, because, my friend, those planets are closer to the sun. Huh? That's what you're dealing with. So, if you go back 1,000 years, 800 years, we went through what was called the medieval warm period, when temperatures were significantly higher than they are today, okay? So there's the turbocharged handcarts that were causing them. Those 4x4 bloody handcarts, what were they doing? And then, after the medieval warm period, we went into what scientists call the Little Ice Age. And a lot of the, people say, it's the warmest year since records begun. And you say, when did records begin? 1864? That's 10 seconds ago in climate cycles on the Earth. And what they've done is picked it up as we were coming out of the Little Ice Age, and then comparing that temperature with now and saying, ooh, look at the gap. During the Little Ice Age, it was so cold, the Thames froze over, and they used to have ice fairs on the Thames every year. And here we go. This is from the Little Ice Age up to what? After the 1950s. The green line is sunspot activity. The red line is Earth temperature. As Al Gore would say in his documentary, I think there's some connection. Then we pick it up from 1860 up to the present day, and again, the green is sunspot activity, and the red is Earth temperature. Now, if you look at it, from 1940 to about 1975, temperatures were falling to such an extent that the BBC was doing documentaries on the dangers of a coming ice age. And after the 1940s, sunspot activity dropped in relation to that, and then started picking up, and so did Earth temperature. Like I say, I think there's some connection. This is a guy who is not a representative of oil companies or anything like that. Is a guy called Peter Taylor, who was represented as an advocate of Greenpeace. He's a green environmentalist. I watched his presentation a few months ago in England. This is what he said. Behind the scenes, there's major disagreement among scientists. I know that. Parallel to carbon dioxide rising, the solar field has increased by over 200% since 1900, and this is not factored into computer models. Global temperature is not rising as predicted. In fact, it fell by a whopping 0.6 degrees over the last 12 months, as much as it had gained in the previous 50 years. Many of the apparently random fluctuations in past temperature, like when the Vikings grew crops in Greenland, correlate with variations in the solar electric field. Between 1983 and 2001, cloud cover, according to the International Satellite Cloud Climatology Project, fell by 4%, more than enough to heat oceans and account for global warming. A spate of recent science shows that temperature oscillations are timed by solar cycles, that the jet stream is affected by the solar wind, and that past high and low points in the solar cycle correlate with past temperature swings. It's the bloody sun. And temperatures have been dropping in recent years because the solar sunspot cycle has been going through a real low point, to the point where this British newspaper announced global warming could stop naturally for 10 years, say scientists. Oh, but when it starts again, ooh, we're in trouble. Oh, yeah. Have you noticed, too, global warming is not the term anymore because temperature's falling. Climate change is the new one.
An international storm has swirled over the University of East Anglia all year, over what really happened inside its climatic research unit. It's alleged the scientists working there on global warming manipulated or hid key data. Suspicions that were triggered by private emails getting into the hands of bloggers, messages that suggested the scientists were prepared to bend the figures or bury results that didn't suit them.
These emails show a pattern of suppression, manipulation, and secrecy that was inspired by ideology, condescension, and profit. They read more like scientific fascism than scientific process.
Gore has said that the northern polar ice cap could be completely gone in as little as 7 years. But Brazil's Metsul Weather Center reports the ice and snow cover in the Arctic have recovered to within 1% of normal, even though the official start of winter is still more than a week away. And it says the southern polar ice cap actually has an additional 772,000 square miles of ice now compared to a year ago.
A ClimateGate bombshell. Phil Jones, a leading global warming scientist, now reportedly saying there's been no evidence of global warming for 15 years.
My next guest wants to sue Al Gore for fraud.
We have tried and tried and tried to get a debate on global warming with scientists on the other side. Al Gore or any of the scientists behind him over at the UN IPCC, we'd love to have a debate with them, but they say, oh no, the debate is over.
Yeah.
Well, now there are 30,000 of us. We have 30,000 scientists, 9,000 PhDs, who have signed up to debunk global warming.
It seems that being green does pay. Just ask Al Gore.
I've been willing to put my money where my mouth is. Do you think there's something wrong with being active in business in this country?
I am simply asking for clarification.
I'm proud of it.
The relationship.
I'm proud of it.
Al Gore wants to become the first carbon billionaire, and he's poised to do it. Pledged to spend $300 million to promote climate fears, promote government policy that's going to force carbon markets, carbon trading, where Al Gore is essentially either founded or a partner in a whole wide range of groups, including in Chicago and in the UK stock market climate carbon trading, where he is poised to benefit incredibly.
French physicist and noted global warming skeptic is calling Al Gore a crook. Allegre accuses Gore of presiding over an eco-business that pumps out cash. He says Gore's followers are like religious zealots and are actually endangering the planet. Allegre contends environmentalists are driven by a Judeo-Christian guilt complex that leads them to paint worst-case scenarios and attribute little understood natural cycles to human misbehavior.
Well, thank you for coming. I'm a geologist. Carbon dioxide is a natural gas. It has dominated the atmosphere for an extraordinarily long period of time, and we now are at a dangerously low level. If we halved the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we would have no terrestrial plants. Carbon dioxide is plant food. It is not a pollutant. To use words like pollution with carbon dioxide is misleading and deceptive.
So here we're looking at the ice core record from Vostok, and in the red we see temperature going up from early time to later time at a very key interval when we came out of a glaciation. And we see the temperature going up, and then we see the CO2 coming up. CO2 lags behind that increase. It's got an 800-year lag, so temperature is leading CO2 by 800 years.
CERN, C-E-R-N, one of the world's largest and most prestigious centers for scientific research, has concluded that it's the sun's rays, not human activity, which controls the Earth's climate.
Wait a minute, malaria could be as a result of increase in global temperatures, could it not?
That is nonsense. Anyone in Russia knows that malaria has happened in Russia in the past. It's not anything to do with warming, and in fact now the world is cooling. You understand that? The world is cooling and has been cooling for 7 years, and the leading scientists, so-called scientists, have been trying to hide that evidence.
Mr. Corcoran, the Copenhagen summit is a waste of time. What do you think? Mr. Corbyn says it's a complete waste of time.
There is a gigantic bandwagon run by governments primarily who want to control world energy supplies and hold back development in the third world. Let's be clear. The West, or the leading world, wants to stay ahead, and they're doing anything they can to stay ahead. And this thing they're doing now is just the same as the banking crisis. It's creating a whole bubble of false values. Carbon dioxide is actually a good thing for the world. More CO2 means plants and agriculture is more efficient and plants grow faster. We should be campaigning for more CO2, not less, and we should end this anti-scientific nonsense now.
When asked to act as an expert reviewer on the International Panel of Climate Change's last two reports, he was astonished to find that not one of their 22 contributing authors on sea levels was a sea level specialist. Yet the results of all this deliberate ignorance, reliance on rigged computer models, have become the most powerful single driver of the entire warmist hysteria. This world expert in sea level rise has said despite fluctuations down as well as up, the sea is not rising. It hasn't risen in 50 years. And quite apart from examining the hard evidence, the elementary laws of physics, latent heat needed to melt ice, tells us that the apocalypse conjured up by Al Gore and company couldn't possibly come about. And what has Obama done? What are governments all around the world doing? They are appointing people who are global warming fanatics to head their science, their environment, and their energy policy. It's all a scam, and there's confirmation of it, okay?